Loveliest listener of the ton. On the night London decided to be entertained, Miss Cordelia Wren stood in a borrowed gown and prepared to do something unforgivable. She intended to win. Not a husband, not a title, a way out. The Merrimont charity auction was supposed to be respectable, an evening where society congratulated itself for generosity while purchasing amusements in silk gloves. A painted fan, a rare book, a dance, a person, if one used pretty enough words. Cordelia arrived late, precisely as the orchestra began a waltz that sounded too cheerful to be trusted. She was 22, with dark hair pinned neatly, a face that looked innocent until you noticed her eyes, too steady, too observant, too practiced at measuring danger. She wore pearl earrings that were not hers, and a pale lavender gown that had been altered overnight to fit her ribs, as though she were a secret being forced into shape. At her side, her guardian, Lady Pettigrew, smiled like a woman shepherding livestock. "Remember," Lady Pettigrew murmured, "you are here to be selected, not to select." Cordelia returned a calm, dutiful smile. "Yes, Lady Pettigrew." She did not say what she was really thinking. "Tonight, I will be selected by the highest bidder. And I will make certain the highest bidder is the one man in London who should never, ever want me." Across the ballroom, men and women glittered like cut glass. The air smelled of citrus and candle wax and money. Laughter rose in soft waves. Secrets lived under every pleasantry. Cordelia kept her chin lifted as she moved through the room, because she had learned that if you appear uncertain, society will push, and if you appear needy, society will eat. She reached the edge of the crowd just as the hostess, the Dowager Duchess of Merrimont, clapped her hands. "Ladies and gentlemen," the Duchess announced, eyes bright with mischief, "we shall begin the bidding." The room responded with delighted murmurs, London's favorite sound, permission. A footman brought forward the first lot, a jeweled snuff-box. Hands fluttered, bids rose, polite applause followed. Harmless. Then came the second lot, a private dinner with a viscount known for charming women and forgetting their names. Laughter too loud. Cordelia's stomach tightened because she knew what was coming. She had read the list, hidden in Lady Pettigrew's desk. Lot 7, the final lot, the one everyone pretended was a joke because jokes were safer than truth. Cordelia, on impulse that had become strategy, turned her gaze toward the far end of the room. And there he was, Lord Adrian Blackwell. Not a lord by birth, a lord by money. A man the ton did not know how to classify, which meant they did not know how to control him. Adrian stood near a marble column, half-shadowed, dressed in black so severe it made other men look like peacocks. 29, tall, lean, and beautifully composed as though he had taught himself never to react first. His hair was dark, his jaw clean-shaven, his eyes an unnerving gray that seemed to strip rooms down to their lies. The whispers around him were always contradictory. He's a genius. He's a brute. He bought his title. He doesn't need one. He owns half the shipping in the Channel. He never dances. He never smiles. Cordelia watched him with the unpleasant certainty that he would be her salvation or her destruction. She just hadn't decided which. The Duchess continued the auction, trinkets, paintings, a waltz with a charming duke. Then, at last, the Duchess's eyes gleamed. "And now," she purred, "our final offering." The room shifted, breath tightened, fans lifted like shields. A footman brought forward the first lot. The Duchess read it slowly, savoring. A dance, ladies and gentlemen, and a private conversation with Miss Cordelia Wren. Cordelia felt the world go perfectly, brutally still. Her name rippled through the room like a stone dropped into water. She could feel the looks landing on her, appraisal, curiosity, hunger. A woman whispered, too sweetly, "Isn't she the one with no family?" A man murmured, "She's pretty enough to sell." Lady Pettigrew's hand pressed into Cordelia's elbow, hard. "Smile," she hissed through her teeth. "You'll fetch a fine sum." Cordelia smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was a blade of a smile. Bidding began. A baron raised a hand, then another, then a wealthy viscount collected women the way he collected racehorses. Cordelia kept her eyes forward, hands clasped, face calm, while her pulse screamed, because she understood the game in a way the room did not. This wasn't charity. This was purchase disguised as entertainment. Then a voice cut through the bidding, low, calm, unhurried. 50 guineas. The room snapped toward the source. Adrian had not moved. He hadn't raised his voice. He simply spoke as though he were naming a fact. Murmurs erupted. 50? He's mad. He's making a point. He's making a spectacle. The Viscount laughed. 60. Adrian's gaze stayed on Cordelia. 80. Cordelia's stomach flipped. This was too high now, too loud. Lady Pettigrew's eyes glittered. "Excellent," she breathed, as though Cordelia were a vase. The Viscount's smile thinned. 100. A hush. Even the orchestra softened, sensing blood. Adrian didn't blink. 150. The room collectively inhaled. The Duchess's fan fluttered, delighted. "Oh, Lord Blackwell," she sighed, "how generous." Adrian's mouth did not move into a smile. "I'm not generous," he said. "I'm precise." The Viscount's face reddened. 200, he snapped. Cordelia's hands went cold. She had expected Adrian to bid. She had not expected him to fight. Adrian finally took a step forward. His gaze remained locked on Cordelia as though the entire ton had vanished. 300, he said. The room broke into stunned murmurs. This was no longer sport. This was war. The Viscount sputtered, but the room was watching him now, judging him. To back down would look weak. To continue would look desperate. He lifted his chin. 350. Adrian's voice didn't rise. 500. A silence so complete it felt like a verdict. The Viscount's mouth opened, then closed. He lowered his hand. The Duchess beamed like a cat with cream. "Sold," she declared, "to Lord Blackwell." Applause erupted, gleeful, cruel, delighted. Cordelia's skin prickled. Lady Pettigrew leaned close, breath hot with triumph. "Do not embarrass me," she whispered. "You will go with him." Cordelia turned her head slightly. "I intended to," she murmured. Lady Pettigrew blinked. Cordelia's smile sharpened. "Because I chose him." Adrian crossed the room with the unhurried step of a man who knew he was being watched and did not care. He stopped before Cordelia and offered his hand. Up close, he smelled faintly of cedar and smoke. His eyes, cool gray, assessed her with unnerving focus, as though he was trying to determine whether she was trap or treasure. Cordelia placed her gloved hand in his. His fingers closed gently, not possessive, but certain. "You're trembling," Adrian said quietly. Cordelia lifted her chin. "You paid 500 guineas for me. Wouldn't you tremble?" Adrian's gaze flicked to the crowd, those bright, hungry faces. "They think they witnessed a purchase," he murmured. Cordelia's pulse jumped. "And didn't they?" she whispered. Adrian's eyes returned to hers. "No," he said, "they witnessed a theft." Cordelia's breath caught. "What do you mean?" Adrian guided her away from the center of the ballroom toward a narrow corridor lined with portraits, ancestors staring down with painted disapproval. "I mean," he said softly, "that Lady Pettigrew owes debt, large debt, dangerous debt. She has been paying it by offering girls to men who like to collect pretty things." Cordelia's throat tightened so hard she could barely speak. "I am not a pretty thing," Adrian finished. "I am not property." Cordelia's eyes flashed with something like approval. "Good," he murmured, "because I didn't pay for your body, Miss Wren." Cordelia's heart hammered. "Then why did you?" Adrian leaned slightly closer. "Because you're not the only one being sold," he said, "and you're the only one in that room who knows it." Cordelia's stomach dropped. She did know it, because 2 nights ago she had overheard Lady Pettigrew speaking to a man behind the library door, describing Cordelia as compliant, as though she were a horse, and describing another girl as well, a younger girl, her friend. Eliza Rowan, 16, bright-eyed, desperate to believe London could be kind. Cordelia's voice shook, the first crack of her composure. "Eliza," she whispered. Adrian nodded once. "They intend to sell her next," he said, "and if we don't stop it tonight, she will vanish and the Ton will applaud the charity auction that paid for her disappearance." Cordelia's breath trembled. "And you?" she managed. "What do you gain from stopping it?" Adrian's eyes held hers for a long beat. Then he said something that hit like a slap. "I gain you not dying in a gilded cage, and I gain the satisfaction of watching Lady Pettigrew fall." Cordelia's spine straightened. "You hate her." Adrian's jaw tightened. "My sister," he said, voice low, "was sold into a marriage when she was 15. Cordelia's breath caught. "She died before she turned 17. The corridor seemed to narrow. Adrian's eyes darkened, and London called it unfortunate, he said, and then went back to dancing. Cordelia felt a hot, violent rage rise in her chest. "I want her ruined," Cordelia's voice whispered. Adrian's gaze sharpened. "No," he corrected softly, "you want her exposed." A difference with teeth. Cordelia looked at him. This man was dangerous, not because he could break rules, but because he could break systems. "Tell me what to do," Cordelia said quietly. Adrian's mouth barely curved. "We're going to give London a better show," he murmured. They returned to the ballroom together. That was the first scandal. A man like Adrian Blackwell escorting a nobody like Cordelia Wren as though she were a duchess. Whispers rose instantly. "She's caught him. He's mocking the auction. He'll ruin her for sport." Cordelia's kept her chin lifted. Adrian's hand stayed light at her waist as they moved through the crowd. They approached the dais where the Duchess of Meromont sat, flushed with triumph. Adrian's voice was polite. "Your Grace." The Duchess fluttered her fan. "Lord Blackwell, you've made this evening positively legendary." Adrian's gaze did not soften. "Then let us make it useful," he said. The Duchess blinked. "Pardon?" Adrian reached into his coat and withdrew a folded document. He held it out. "A ledger." The Duchess's eyes glittered. "What is that?" Adrian's voice carried, not loudly, but clear enough that the closest cluster of guests leaned in. "It is Lady Pettigrew's debt, and the names of the men she has been paying." The Duchess's fan stilled. The cluster of guests froze. Lady Pettigrew across the room went suddenly pale. Cordelia's pulse rolled. Adrian continued, calm as ice. "Tonight, the Ton applauded charity. In truth, it applauded trafficking." A ripple of shock moved through the room like a wave. Lady Pettigrew's mouth opened in a laugh too brittle to be real. "Ridiculous," she called. "My lord, you're drunk on your own drama." Adrian turned his gaze to her. "I am sober, and I am bored of your lies." He lifted the ledger. "Gentlemen," he said, voice steady, "if you would like to see your names beside your payments, I am happy to read them aloud." Silence. Then a chair scraped. A lord shifted, face blanching. A woman's fan snapped shut like a weapon. Lady Pettigrew's eyes went wild. "You cannot do this," she hissed. Cordelia's voice, quiet, clear, cut through the room. "Oh, but we can," she said. All heads turned. Cordelia stepped forward. She felt the room's gaze land on her like rain, cold, judgmental, and yet she did not flinch. "London, you adore a scandal because it allows you to feel innocent while you watch someone burn." Murmurs rose. Cordelia continued, voice tightened with truth. "This auction was not charity. It was a market, and I was not the first girl offered. I will not be the last unless you stop applauding and start seeing." The Duchess's smile faltered. Lady Pettigrew's face twisted with fury. "Ungrateful little—" Adrian's voice cut in, quiet and dangerous. "Careful," he said. "You're speaking in front of witnesses now." Lady Pettigrew lunged forward, desperate, reaching for Cordelia's arm, and then the second twist landed, hard. A young girl stepped out from behind the curtain near the musicians, Eliza Rowan, her face white, her hands shaking. In her fist, a folded letter. Eliza's voice trembled, but she spoke anyway. "She told me," Eliza said, eyes on Cordelia. "She told me what Lady Pettigrew planned, and I found this in her desk." Eliza held up the letter. The Duchess leaned forward. The room leaned forward. Adrian took the letter, unfolded, and read once. His expression changed, just slightly. Then he looked up and said clearly, "This is an agreement." Lady Pettigrew's mouth caught. "To sell Eliza Rowan for the sum of 600 guineas. The room erupted. Lord Haversham turned the color of sour milk. Women gasped behind fans. Men stared at their shoes as if the floor might swallow them. Lady Pettigrew hissed, "Lies!" Cordelia stepped closer to the Duchess, voice calm as a death sentence. "Your Grace," she said softly, "if you permit this, the ton will speak of you forever." The Duchess's eyes narrowed. She liked being spoken of. She did not like being blamed. She lifted her chin. "Guards," she snapped. 2 men moved forward at once. Lady Pettigrew's face went white. "Wait!" she began. Cordelia watched, not with triumph, but with something sharper, relief. Lady Pettigrew was seized. Her shrieks broke the ballroom's elegance like glass. "You cannot! I raised you! You owe me!" Cordelia's voice remained quiet. "I owe you nothing," she said. Lady Pettigrew's eyes went feral as she was dragged away. "You think you've won? You think you're safe?" Cordelia's chest tightened. Lady Pettigrew leaned forward, venom on her tongue. "Ask Lord Blackwell what he paid for your name," she hissed. "Ask him what he really wants from you." Cordelia's blood went cold. Adrian's jaw tightened. The room, hungry as ever, shifted from shock to curiosity, because now the scandal had teeth. Cordelia turned slowly toward Adrian. "What does she mean?" Cordelia asked quietly. Adrian held her gaze, and for the first time, uncertainty touched his face. Not guilt, not fear, something worse. Regret. "I was going to tell you," he said. Cordelia's voice steadied. "Tell me now." Adrian's throat worked. He leaned in, low enough that only she could hear. "I bought your name," he murmured. Cordelia froze. "My name?" Adrian's eyes held hers, raw now. "Cordelia Wren," he said, "is not the name you were born with." Cordelia's stomach dropped. "You don't know that?" Adrian's gaze didn't waver. "I do," he said, "because I paid a magistrate to find out who you really are." Cordelia's pulse roared. The ballroom blurred. Eliza's hand found Cordelia's, trembling. "Cordelia," Eliza whispered. Cordelia couldn't feel her fingers. Adrian's voice was quiet, almost pained. "Your real name," he said, "is Cordelia Hart." Cordelia felt her world tilt. Hart. A name attached to a scandal from years ago, whispers of a girl stolen from a noble house, a child taken in the night, a family ruined by rumor. Cordelia's lips parted. "No," she breathed. Adrian's gaze softened. "Yes," he said, "you are the missing daughter of the Earl of Fenwick." Cordelia's lungs refused to work. The Earl of Fenwick was one of the most powerful men in England, a man who had lost a child and turned bitter enough to break anyone who reminded him of it. Cordelia's vision swam. "You," she whispered, "you brought me here to expose me?" Adrian's jaw clenched. "I brought you here to save you," he said. Cordelia's voice sharpened. "By ripping my life open in front of London?" Adrian's eyes burned. "I was going to return you to your family, quietly, safely, but Lady Pettigrew moved faster than I anticipated." Cordelia's pulse thundered. "So your kindness is strategy. Your rescue is a plan." Adrian's face went still. Then he said the only honest thing in him. "Yes." Cordelia's chest tightened. Adrian continued, voice lower now. "I wanted to give you back what was stolen," he said. "And I wanted," his gaze flicked to her mouth, then back to her eyes, like a man punishing himself for desire. "I wanted to know you." Cordelia's throat burned. "You had no right," she whispered. Adrian's voice went rough. "I know." The ballroom watched like wolves in silk. Cordelia felt London's eyes on her, waiting to see whether she would collapse into the role they preferred, a girl saved, a girl grateful, a girl quiet. Instead, Cordelia lifted her chin. She turned to the room, and she spoke. "If I am Cordelia Hart," she said clearly, "then I have spent my life being stolen from." The room went still again. Cordelia's voice did not shake. "I will not be stolen again," she said. She turned to Adrian. Her eyes were bright with anger and something worse, truth. "You may have saved me tonight, but you do not own the story of who I become." Adrian's gaze held hers, raw now. "Then tell me," he murmured, "who do you become?" Cordelia inhaled, steadying herself. "A woman," she said softly, "who chooses." Then she did the most unexpected thing of all. She offered Adrian her hand. Not forgiveness, not surrender, a test. "If you want to stand beside me," she said, "you will do it without controlling me." Adrian stared at her hand as if it were a blade offered hilt first. Then he took it, reverent, careful, not claiming, choosing. And the third twist landed, quietly, devastatingly. The Duchess of Maromont rose from her chair and said loudly enough for the ton to hear, "Invite the Earl of Fenwick." The room exploded in whispers. Cordelia's stomach dropped, because if her father arrived tonight, London would not merely watch, London would feast. Adrian's grip tightened around her fingers. Cordelia turned to him, voice low. "What do I do?" Adrian's eyes softened. "For once," he murmured, "you tell the truth before they weaponize it." The Earl of Fenwick arrived like winter, silver hair, dark eyes, a face carved by old pain. When he entered, the ballroom fell silent as if the air itself feared him. His gaze swept the crowd, searching. Then it landed on Cordelia. His body went still. For a moment, the man looked broken. Then anger returned like armor. "You," he said, voice hard. Cordelia stepped forward, heart steady only because she forced it. "My lord," she said. Fenwick's jaw clenched. "You dare stand in a ballroom after what was done to my family?" Cordelia's throat tightened. "I did not do it," she said clearly. Fenwick's eyes narrowed. "You wear my daughter's face." Cordelia's breath trembled, but she did not bend. "I wear it because it's mine." Murmurs rose. Fenwick stepped closer, voice sharp. "Prove it." Cordelia looked around the room at all those watching mouths, those hungry eyes, those fans fluttering with anticipation. Then she did something elegant, scandalous, and strangely modern. She refused to perform pain for their entertainment. "No," Cordelia said calmly. The room froze. Fenwick blinked, stunned. Cordelia continued, voice steady. "I will not prove myself to a ballroom. I will not bleed in front of strangers so they can decide whether I deserve my own name." Fenwick's throat worked. Cordelia looked him in the eye. "If you want the truth," she said softly, "come tomorrow, alone, no audience." A beat. London held its breath. Then Fenwick did the only thing no one expected. He nodded. "Tomorrow," he said, hoarse. Cordelia's chest rose. She turned away from him, and in that moment she felt Adrian behind her, steady as a wall. She didn't look at him, not yet, because she was not anyone's prize, not even his. The next day, Cordelia stood in Fenwick House, surrounded by portraits that never knew hunger. Fenwick sat across from her, hands clenched. Adrian waited in the hall, not intruding, not controlling, for once giving her the dignity of space. Fenwick's voice broke the silence. "If you are my daughter," he said, "where have you been?" Cordelia's eyes held him. "Surviving," she said. Fenwick's jaw clenched. "Who took you?" Cordelia inhaled. "Lady Pettigrew," she said. "She raised me as a tool. She planned to sell me when I became profitable." Fenwick's face went white. Cordelia continued, voice calm. "And you," she added softly, "did not look hard enough to find me." Fenwick flinched as if struck. He lowered his gaze. For the first time, the powerful Earl looked like a man who had failed. "I searched," he said, voice tight. Cordelia's eyes softened just slightly. "Not enough," she replied. A long silence. Then Fenwick whispered, "I'm sorry." It was not dramatic, it was not pretty, but it was real, and real things change people. Cordelia exhaled, feeling something unlock in her chest. Not forgiveness, not yet, but possibility. Fenwick swallowed. "You may return as my daughter, with every protection, every privilege." Cordelia's mouth curved faintly. "And my choices?" she asked. Fenwick hesitated. Then, quietly, "Yes." Cordelia blinked. He added rough, "I will not lose you twice." Cordelia stood. She moved toward the door. Fenwick's voice stopped her, cracking. "Do you hate me?" Cordelia paused. Then she said the truth that carried the story's moral straight into modern day. "I don't hate you," she said softly. "I simply won't shrink to make you comfortable." She left him sitting in silence. Outside, Adrian waited. He looked up as she stepped into the corridor. His eyes searched her face. "Well?" he asked quietly. Cordelia studied him. You were right, she said. Adrian's shoulders loosened with relief. Cordelia continued, voice steady. And you were wrong. Adrian froze. Cordelia stepped closer. You saved me for your own reasons, she said. You told yourself it was justice, but you also wanted control. Adrian's jaw tightened. Yes, he admitted. Cordelia's gaze was calm. Do you still want me? She asked softly. Now that you cannot manage me like a plan. Adrian stared at her for a long beat. Then he stepped closer. His voice was low. I want you, he said, in whatever shape you choose to be. Cordelia's breath trembled. That is a dangerous promise, she whispered. Adrian's eyes warmed. I am a dangerous man, he murmured, but I am not dangerous to you. Cordelia held his gaze. And if you ever become dangerous to me, she said quietly, I will leave. Adrian nodded once. Good, he replied. Then I will never deserve you by accident, only by effort. Cordelia's chest rose. For the first time, she allowed herself a small, genuine smile. Then she held out her hand, not to be owned, to be met. Adrian took it like a vow. He lifted her fingers and kissed her knuckles once, reverent, restrained. Cordelia's eyes closed for half a second, not because she was weak, because she was choosing softness without surrender. Weeks later, the ton did what it always did. It adjusted. Lady Pettigrew was ruined. The men who bid on girls suddenly remembered urgent travel plans. The Duchess of Maremont pretended she had orchestrated everything for charity. And Cordelia Hart, once Cordelia Wren, walked into society not as a rescued girl, but as a woman with a name, a choice, and the quiet power of a truth spoken before anyone could twist it. At a ball, a matron hissed, "Bought." Cordelia turned her head, calm as ice. "Yes," she replied, "and then I bought myself back." The matron had no answer. Adrian watched Cordelia from across the room, something tender in his eyes that he never offered anyone else. When he approached, he did not claim her. He asked, "May I have this dance?" he said. Cordelia's mouth curved. "Try to keep up," she murmured. And as they moved onto the floor, London watched, furious, fascinated, helpless. Because the most scandalous thing a woman can do is not to be desired. It is to refuse to be owned by the desire of others. And Cordelia Hart had become at last the author of her own life. My loveliest listener of the ton, if there is something to learn from her, it is this. Never confuse being chosen with being valued, and never mistake rescue for respect.